Hi, welcome to another presentation developed by me, Mara Briere, a master's level certified family life educator and founder and president of Grow a Strong Family. We are going to be discussing how to care for the caretaker, and our program was funded by Shana 15 and the Concord Carlisle Community Chest. We're very grateful for their contributions to our organization so that we can provide you with these wonderful presentations. In today's presentation, we're going to be discussing chronic mental illness and its effect on the family, strategies for caretakers, and what self-care looks like. When your family is uprooted by mental illness, any diagnosis of a chronic illness, including mental illness, puts high demands on whomever is the primary caretaker as well as the rest of the family. And it also imposes unanticipated adjustments. Very often it requires changes in work schedules and routines, what meals might look like, how holidays are celebrated. In other words, having a chronic illness in the family, and especially a mental illness, tends to create a whole new normal for the family. We have to develop new schedules, new routines, different ways of approaching holidays and any other major events that families go through in the course of their lifespans. Mental illness in a family member creates a shift in the perception of the family and how it functions. And a lot of this has to do with how family members respond to having a loved one with a mental illness. Some common ways that family members react include some families have a hard time accepting the uncertainty because there's so much that's not known, and we don't even know in the course of an illness what it's going to look like or how it's going to morph or if it's going to go into remission, and if it does, for how long, and if it doesn't, will it. There's oftentimes pessimism, a sense of negative self-talk. I can't believe I said so many stupid things or done so many stupid things, or why can't I be more helpful? Why can't I be more compassionate? There is very often unrealistic expectations. I hear this a lot, actually, since very often the age of onset for mental illness tends to be during the transition age years, which is youth in ages 14 to 30. And families, parents in particular, tend to be very unrealistic, expecting their kids to kind of recover and get back on the bandwagon and finish college or go to work or become self-supporting. And depending on the nature of the illness and how severe and serious it is, that may or may not be realistic or reasonable. Sometimes family members want to do this perfectly. We want to provide the best possible care for our loved ones, and we want to be the best caretakers possible, when we forget that this is all new ground, at least for most of us. So being the best sometimes just means showing up today. Sometimes there's a lack of assertiveness because, frankly, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to expect. We don't know how our behaviors are going to impact anybody, particularly our loved ones who are not yet stable, who are still unwell. This particular picture gives us a good idea of what is our responsibility and what is not our responsibility. What is our responsibility is our own words, what comes out of our mouth. What comes out of my mouth is my responsibility. How I choose to behave is on me. What my actions are, where I apply my efforts, my mistakes, my ideas, and the consequences of my actions, all of that on me. There's an underlying assumption that I have some control over what I do with myself in terms of what comes out of my mouth and how I behave and how I implement my ideas. But what is not my responsibility is what comes out of other people's mouths when other people make mistakes, when other people have beliefs that may or may not be reasonable or realistic. Very often, one of the ways we know that our loved ones are not well is because their own thinking is so distorted. We're not responsible for that. We're not responsible for their ideas, good or bad. We're not responsible for their actions. And we're sure as heck not responsible for the consequences of their choices. So this is just a reminder that we need to get grounded and centered by what do I have control over and what don't I have control over? What do I cause? What don't I cause? What can I fix and repair? What can't I fix and repair? So it's a reminder that what is my responsibility is basically stuff having to do with me. What is not my responsibility is stuff having to do with other people, whether or not they are well or not well. And if you remember, especially when you were parenting young children, this was what the world looked like. To parents, parents basically teach their children you're responsible for the choices you make, good or bad, the successes and failures that you learn from and that you grow from. And so am I. But your successes are not mine. Your successes are yours, and vice versa. So one of the biggest strategies that we really like is the strategy of breathing. I know, we all breathe, and we all think we know how to breathe. But the reality is that in order to do it effectively, we need to do it in a systematic way so that our muscles relax, we decrease our heart rate, and eventually we lower our blood pressure. And there are many apps that you can download on your phones that will help you with your breathing. There's also something called a breathing ball, which basically just gets you to have an external tool that you can breathe out and breathe in, similar to your heart or your lungs expanding and contracting. They're not that expensive. You can pick it up at Amazon or at a Learning Express that's near you. Very useful tool, as are the breathing apps that you can download for your phone. Another thing to do is to change your internal dialogue. And what we mean by this is, what are you saying to yourself, and how are you responding to what you're saying? So every time you think, I must do X, Y, and Z, try thinking, I prefer. I have to go food shopping. Instead of saying it that way, which makes us all have pictures of being exhausted and dragging ourselves through the store, try thinking, I prefer going food shopping because then I know I have the food in the house that I like to eat. When you think guilt, try thinking remorse. I feel so guilty that my son or daughter or husband or wife or brother or sister or parent has this mental illness, because we should have seen the signs coming. No, not necessarily. Instead, think how sad it is that we have to deal with this as a family and that they have to deal with it too. When you think should, try thinking choose to. I should be more compassionate. I choose to be more compassionate. I should have more patience. I choose to have as much patience as is reasonable. Do you see? It's gentler and kinder and more compassionate to you as well as for others. What are some other thoughts that you might have? What kind of exchanges can you make? To help you, we've included this little word exchange table because it's useful that instead of thinking ought to, thinking I had better because it's in my best interest. Do you see how it lends itself to that? Every time we get into all or nothing thinking, it's better for us to say many. Not all days are tough. Many days are tough. We can't always do something, but we can often do it. I can't stand being stuck at a red light. I don't like being stuck at a red light because it often makes me late. Even the language, the exchange language, lends itself to other exchange language. Sometimes I feel like I'm an awful person. Okay, but more often than not, I sometimes can be highly undesirable, and I don't even want to be around me. Again, it's how you're framing it, and framing it in a more loving way and in a gentler, kinder way also invites you to look at it, look at your behavior, look at how you're acting, but also to look at other people and to look at what they're doing or not doing in a whole different light. I'm a failure. No, you're not a failure. You just weren't successful at this particular thing. It doesn't mean you're unsuccessful at all things. So that's important to note. Another way that we can get into exchanging is to change your statement. So instead of saying, I have to do well, think, I want to do well. Instead of thinking to, especially your loved one, you shouldn't do that, Just say, I prefer you not to do that. It automatically, again, lends itself to another person paying attention and then to another person possibly complying with what you want them to do. Anytime you say, I can't stand my job, you're preventing yourself from moving forward. You're becoming very stuck. If instead you say, I don't like my job, automatically you're setting the motion, the energy to make change. When you think, or your loved one thinks, I'm a loser, if you think instead, I'm just not doing well right now, or I'm not doing well at this task, it puts it in perspective, and perspective enables us to move on and to not get stuck and to not be stuck. Other vocabulary we use is what's called emotional vocabulary. So when somebody says, I'm really anxious, why don't you give them the word concerned? Oftentimes, that's what the anxiety is. It's about being concerned. What if they say, well, I'm really depressed? I hear this a lot, especially from one of my loved ones. I'm depressed. And I notice that her affect is actually sad. So that's what I say to her. I say, oh, you look sad. Would you say that's a better word? I guess so. I'm angry. I don't want to live like this. Are you annoyed because you have some limitations? Do you see? Automatically lending itself to a gentler, kinder, more loving way to manage the feelings, the emotions, the actions, the behaviors. By changing the internal dialogue for ourselves and by translating it, we automatically tap into our better self. And by tapping into our better self, we care for ourselves more lovingly, and therefore we care for the other people in our lives more lovingly. Another strategy that we find very helpful is to move. Sometimes we get so stuck that we don't move, and so you need to. So get some music on that you like, get up, dance, move around your house, sing at the top of your lungs, get that beat going. Even if you don't feel joyful, by the time you get done, you will probably feel better, only because sometimes we have to act as if in order to get to, I do feel this way. So fake it till you make it and see if that will work for you. Another strategy that really helps is to laugh. Research has shown that laughter is a great way to reduce stress. So what or who do you think is funny? Sometimes, this is a strategy actually that's been given to me by many of the families I work with. They will spend about 40 minutes YouTube trolling for some of their favorite comedians. And then they will listen to that if they really need to get out of a funky place. So they've watched Jeff Dunham, who's very funny with the different characters that he's created. Jim Gaffigan is also very funny, especially since he makes fun of himself a lot and his weight. John Pinette is funny. John Mahoney is funny. John Mulaney is funny. There are so many great comedians that are out there that can just get you smiling, if nothing else, that it's worth the time to expose yourself to some of this. Other coping strategies include simplifying your life. If you can make things more simple, just down to its basics, your life becomes easier and it doesn't feel as overwhelming. You feel as though, yeah, I can manage. Even if it's only I can manage for today or I can manage for this hour. You've already put yourself ahead of the game. Schedule time for yourself and hold it sacred like you would for a doctor's appointment or any other important appointment. Scheduling time for yourself gives you 15 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, whatever it is that you need on a daily basis. That's your time just for you to center, to watch a YouTube clip, to read a story, to write, whatever it is that you need to do to kind of keep yourself grounded. Plan ahead. Prioritize. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Think about all the steps and the things you need to have in place in order to have a fairly smooth, flowy kind of day. Ask for what you need from family, work, and friends, and delegate whatever you can. If somebody's going to the store, there's nothing that says you can't say, would you mind picking up some milk? I'm almost out. Thank you. I'll pay you when you get here. Or whatever else it happens to be that you can delegate, then do so. Avoid can't when you really mean won't. We often do that. Oh, I can't go. because I have to take care of my loved one and I'm worried about them. They're not in a good place. What that really says is you really won't go or don't want to go. Be honest about that. Or say, I'm not sure I can go. Let me see what I can put in place. You don't want to automatically come off with the I can't, because again, what you do when you do that is you encourage yourself to be very limited and to be stuck. And the best way to take care of yourself as a caretaker is to get yourself unstuck. Other strategies include managing your time more effectively. Many of us caretakers tend to be very organized with our time and very good at managing it, but if you find yourself falling behind or feeling overwhelmed, that's a signal, that is a red flag that things are getting away from you and that you're beginning to feel overwhelmed, and you probably haven't been taking good, loving care of yourself, and you need to start scheduling that in and practicing some of your techniques, reintroducing yourself to music, to humor, to breathing, if that's what it means. Learn to say no. You can say, I'll get back to you, and then buy yourself some time to think. I do this a lot. I've been doing this before anybody in my family was seriously ill. I always did it as a parent because I wanted to have the opportunity to consider what are all of the ramifications of where my child wanted to go or what else was going to be going on if there was an event that I forgot to put on the calendar or whatever. So you can also say no by saying yes to something else. Instead of saying, no, I can't take you to the store Tuesday at 2, you can say, I'll be happy to take you to the store Thursday at 3. So you can say no by saying yes to something else. And develop an attitude of gratitude. As difficult as life can be, and we know when we're taking care of somebody who is not well, with all the uncertainty and all the instability that comes along with it, even if they don't seem to appreciate you, what do you appreciate about you in this situation? Do you even appreciate the fact that you can even be there, that you can show up, that you're willing to acquire some skills and tools to make you more effective and more efficient at providing the care that your loved ones need? Are you getting better at being compassionate not only for yourself but to others, and vice versa? Those are things to appreciate, and those are things that you can value about yourself and this opportunity. Some other self-statements that I really like is, I know I can do this. What I often hear from family members is, I don't know if I can do this. And I always see them showing up, putting one foot in front of the other. So the answer is, yeah, you can do this. Just do it one step at a time. And calm down. Breathe. It's also very reasonable to say, this is difficult, and each step I take is a step forward. Even if it's just a toe's worth, you're still moving. You're not moving in place, you're moving. You're acknowledging that it's hard taking care of somebody that you love, especially because very often when our loved ones are unwell and we're taking care of them and we're in it for the long haul, we lose our perspective somewhat, and we only notice the difficulty instead of our resilience and valuing and appreciating the fact that we are showing up and we're being there for them, and we have to get better at being there for ourselves. So it's hard, but it's not impossible because, man, oh man, you're doing it one step at a time. More coping strategies. Eat nutritiously. The better quality food you put in your body, the better you're going to feel. Try something new. Experiment a little bit. I wouldn't experiment with a whole new thing because then you don't know which piece of it you like and which piece of it you hate, but try something new. You need to sleep and sleep well. If you are not sleeping well, then that needs to be addressed, and you might want to talk to your doctor, or you might want to look at what do you need in order to stop the racing thoughts, the anxiety, which is concern. Again, it might be an opportunity to go back to some of that exchange vocabulary and think about what else you can be telling yourself that can get you better sleep. And again, breathe deeply and often. The more shallow your breath is, the less able you are to cope effectively because you're not giving your body a chance to be efficient. And you don't want to be functioning at a lack, especially when you're caregiving over the long haul. Look at your expectations. Are they reasonable? Are they realistic given the circumstances that you have? Deal with problems as they appear. Don't anticipate problems that may or may not ever be an issue for you. But as problems appear, if you have good supports and a good foundation, you can probably manage them quite efficiently and effectively. Be prepared to let go of anything that is not yours. So if your loved one, for example, gets more unwell and may require hospitalization, instead of focusing on how difficult that is and how hard that is and how now you're going to have to go to the hospital and visit all the time, no, you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is say, it's really hard and it's really sad, and I'll do the best I can. And I don't know what that's going to look like this time, but I'll figure it out. Develop and maintain supportive relationships. Stay healthy as you can. Everything's depending on your ability to function in a great way, in a healthy way, in a constructive way. So you need to be taking good, loving care of yourself. The other thing is make time for fun. If you're not going out with your friends or your partners at least once a week, you're doing something that's not working really well. You need to make time for fun, whatever it is. These are terrible words. Should, ought, must, have to. These are words that confine us, that imprison us, that prevent us from moving forward, that keep us in a vice of our own making, by the way, that prevent us from taking on more efficient and effective solutions to whatever it is that life is handing us. So get rid of them. Every time you're faced with a should, ought, must, or have to, challenge it. Why do I have to? Why should I? Why must I? Who says so? Why do I have to? Maybe I prefer to. Maybe I want to. Maybe it would be better for me if I did it. Again, the exchange vocabulary, whenever you're hit with your should, ought, must, have to, very important. Love the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. In case my picture at the very beginning doesn't get you, the serenity prayer is another way to look at it and say, what about this situation can I change? What can't I change? And to help you with this, I've created a grid. And it's called the Serenity Prayer Grid, and I created it a while ago. And in this grid, we look at what are the things I cannot change, and how can I accept the things I cannot change? And then you put it in your plan in your acceptance box. In your courage box, you think about the things I have control over and the steps I can take. And then the courage is, okay, this is my plan to do it. So you're going to look at the things you cannot change and how can you accept the things you cannot change. So, for example, I cannot change the fact that my loved ones are not well. I can't change that. I can't change the fact that they have a narrative that's distorted, that in spite of how much reality says that there's a whole other way of looking at whatever it is, they are not going to see it that way while they are in this unwell state. So how can I accept that? I can accept that I can't change anybody else. The only person I can change is me. So what acceptance looks like me is to maybe look at pictures of them, maybe pray, maybe put on some white light, maybe put on some gentle music, maybe just send out positive energy, whatever it looks like for you. That's what it looks like for me. I send out positive energy. I envision them doing well. I keep the door open, and I have this picture in my mind of an open door that they can walk through when they're clear thinking, and they have a different narrative that's a healthier one, that's reflective more of the common reality that we share. And then with the courage piece, things I have control over, I have control over how I interpret the unwellness, the distorted thinking, the narrative. I also have ways that I can verify it if that's what I need to do, the steps, the timeline, the family tree, whatever it is. Those are concrete. So it would just take courage for me to accept that my loved one has a distorted view of the universe and of our relationship, and yet I still have hope and keep the door open in the event that my loved ones can have a different narrative, or one at least that we share in common. And so the courage is the ability to leave the door open, but to still move on and live life and to embrace joy and happiness and other relationships. Give yourself permission and accept that some things are out of our control. Illness is one of them. Mental illness is certainly one of them. Life happens. It's not all or nothing. We are not meant to be perfect. The thing that I would encourage us all is to be willing to be willing. Let's see what life gives us, accept life on life's terms, figure out how to do that, and live with more joy and more love in your heart. Live your life one day at a time. Make today the best day. So think about this. You might want to do this when you're having a particularly difficult time, or just to create a plan and be proactive. One thing I will do to take care of myself is, for today, it's going to be this. For tomorrow, it might be that. And for the next day, it might be that. Only think of one thing. And it might be the same. Today, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes between 3 and 5 to just read a book or write a letter or whatever it is that you want to do, and tomorrow and the next day. So it can also be the same thing, especially if you want it to become a habit, but it doesn't have to be. What are you going to do to take care of yourself? I've given you some very helpful resources, and these links are also on our webpage, and they're all very, very helpful. I love Byron Katie and her work on the work, because it's challenging our own thinking and encouraging us to make better decisions. It helps with that idea of emotional exchange vocabulary. Sark is just filled with joy and wisdom. Sherry McGregor has written a book about helping parents of estranged adult children, because very often when our transition age youth, who are 14 to 30, and other adult children decide to have a different narrative, it causes estrangement. And it's nice to know that A, it's not your fault, and B, you're not alone. And Sherry McGregor has some wonderful exercises for that. Melody Beattie has done a lot of work on not being codependent, disabling the enabling, and to have a life that's second to none, because you're able to show up for yourself and therefore able to show up for others. Tony Bernhard has written wonderful books about mindfulness and Buddhism and living with the limitations that chronic illness brings into life. Mindfulness meditation is helpful, and of course adult coloring, which we know has been used to great extent to get the breathing in line, to still the mind, to allow calmness to enter. Excellent to do before bedtime, because you're actually engaging more of your mind-body connection, and you're disengaging from the electronics, which will help you sleep better. When best laid plans fail, stick to your normal routines as much as possible. Eat and drink in moderation. Plan on exercise. Build in nature time. Make sure that you have backup plans and backup plans of your backup plans. Music and humor on hand. Prioritize your time and activities. And take good, loving care of yourself. Always, always, always. So in this webinar, we have discussed what chronic mental illness is and its effect on the family, strategies for caretakers, and how to take better care of yourself. For more information on Grow a Strong Family, visit us at growastrongfamily.org and visit us often. And as always, take what you like and leave the rest. Thank you again for joining us for this presentation on taking care of the caretaker, and we welcome you and your feedback, and feel free to visit us often at growastrongfamily.org. Thank you.